welcome to the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. I'm Adam Berry, MLB.com's Pirates reporter, here with Danny asking the questions. Danny, what do we have first?
All right, Adam, we're going to start with Austin, who asks, with the division in reach and division play upcoming, who do you expect will step up for the Pirates during this important run of games?
I think it starts first and foremost with the pitching staff. I think it's Gerrit Cole atop the rotation. It's Ivan Nova. You're going to see both of those guys start here in Milwaukee as the Pirates begin this stretch of 34 of their next 38 games within the NL Central. It's a big opportunity to make up ground. Cole and Nova are going to pitch those two games. Cole has been better of late after that rough four-start stretch earlier this season. He's turned it around. They could still use more innings, more quality innings out of him. And then they could really use a turnaround from Nova, who was such a key to their success in April and May, and kind of stabilizing the rotation, basically being everything they needed from him as far as a veteran presence, effective, what they were looking for when they re-signed him in the offseason. And then Jameson Taillon rounding out that top of the rotation trio. I think those are the three guys that they kind of need to hold things together, because you can count on Chad Kuhl and Trevor Williams to give you innings in the back of the rotation. They're still young, they're still learning on the fly, but you have seen them develop and improve over time. But those are not the kind of guys you need to count on. You need your horses as you enter a pennant race. You need Gerrit Cole, you need Ivan Nova, you need Jameson Taillon. And I think they've all had rough stretches. Cole and Taillon seem to be coming out of them. So I would think that those are the two big guys, Cole, Taillon, and then Nova will be the third one that they need in the rotation. In the lineup, I think it starts and ends, as it often does, with Andrew McCutcheons.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Austin. Now we have Joey, who asks, do you think the Pirates will trade for another outfielder, such as Curtis Granderson, after Gregory Polanco's latest hamstring injury?
That's a great question. It's one we had before the trade deadline when Polanco went down with the second of his now three left hamstring injuries. We thought Jay Bruce made a lot of sense for the Pirates at that time. You've seen him now go to the Indians. He makes a lot of sense there as well. I don't see the Pirates going out and making a move for somebody like Granderson, particularly, somebody who's a rental. They'd only have him for the rest of this season. I do think that the move they made to get Sean Rodriguez is basically going to address that issue. If Polanco is down for any length of time, given the versatility that they have with Rodriguez, Adam Frazier, Josh Harrison, even to a certain extent John Jaso and Jose Osuna, they can fill one outfield spot. The issue that we saw earlier this season is that they were trying to fill two while Starling Marte was suspended. Gregory Polanco spent some time on the disabled list and has dealt with just a variety of injuries. I think they want to get Polanco healthy and back in the lineup as soon as possible. But they have some pieces to kind of mix and match there and fill that right field spot in the meantime. I don't see a rental like a Granderson being in their future. You look at the moves they made at the waiver trade period with Rodriguez and George Cantos. Those are not just 2017 moves. Those are 2018 moves with Rodriguez and potentially into 2019 with Cantos. So I think if there is another outfielder who comes their way who fits those qualifications, somebody who would be under club control going forward, who wouldn't come at a huge acquisition cost, maybe, but I wouldn't really bet on them going out and making kind of a splashy move, just given the depth and the versatility that they have right now.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, Joey. Now we have from Jason. He says, a ways off, but who do you see as the face of the franchise 5 years from now? Obviously, Kutch has carried the title for several years. There are many other options in the future. Personally, I feel like Frazier could be that guy. Interested in your thoughts. Thank you.
I love this question because it is something that's kind of big picture and something that the Pirates might have to deal with, assuming Andrew McCutcheons is not back beyond maybe 2018 after that club option, or potentially on into next year. And they do have a young core that's come up. I think Jameson Taillon is the kind of guy who fits that bill. He's obviously gotten a lot of attention, and he's shown the character that he has with everything that he's overcome, from Tommy John surgery, the hernia operation, and then obviously this year the inspiring comeback from testicular cancer. I think he's a guy that you can put in front of the fan base. He's very popular among the fans, I think. But the difficulty of that is he's a starting pitcher, and it's hard to count on a starting pitcher pitching every fifth day as that face of your franchise. So my pick would actually be Josh Bell. I think he's great in front of the camera. He's great with fans. I think it's really fun to watch him whenever he has an event in the community and he deals with kids or fans. It comes so naturally for him. He's also an everyday guy. He's got a really good personality. He handles kind of the demands of the media and the community aspect of that very well. He's going to be around for the next 5 or 6 years. He's going to be at first base every day, switch hitter, the kind of guy that you can kind of build a little bit of a franchise face around. So he's also had some success already. He's a guy that I think they can count on moving forward. not just to be a reliable guy on the field at first base and in the middle of their lineup, but also out in the community and is sort of a face of the franchise.
That's pretty exciting. Thanks for that question, Jason. And now we have from George, who asks, what is the status of Jungho Gong? Will he play for the Pirates?
This has been the ongoing question all season, something that I've asked a lot as well. Jungho Gong remains on the Pirates restricted list. He is over in South Korea, as he has been all year, following his third driving under the influence arrest in his native South Korea. He was denied a work visa, which would be how he would get into the country to join the Pirates. That process is still ongoing. The Pirates are hopeful that maybe he can be back next year. They've all but officially ruled him out for this year, just given the time frame that he would have to get back. It just wouldn't work out practically. So they're going to hope that he can get a work visa and rejoin them next year, but they have sort of already started to make contingency plans in case that does not come to pass. That's part of why they went out and they got Sean Rodriguez. They have David Freese under contract through 2018 with an option for 19, which was the same time frame as Gong's contract was. They have Adam Frazier, who can bounce around. Josh Harrison is still around. So they have options to move forward with or without him. Certainly their bench would be a lot deeper if he were to somehow make it back next season. But they're good to go at this point, they believe right now, if Jungho Gong is not able to make it back. And quite frankly, to this point, we haven't had a lot of reason to believe that he will be back. It's been going on a year now where Jungho Gong has been trying to get in the country, trying to get that work visa, and we're still left without answers. So the Pirates have been making plans on both sides, hoping he comes back, but expecting and preparing as if he might not.
Awesome. Thanks for that question, George. Now from Rick, AAA Indies pitching is lights out as of late. How do you see the rest of August and into September shaking out for the Pirates pitching staff? Rogue DL stint for Nova. Does Glasnow get pen work in September?
That's an interesting question. I like the guys following the minor league pitching staff. It shows somebody's paying a lot of attention to the Pirates organization as a whole. I also appreciate the idea of the phantom DL stint for Ivan Nova, a guy who's struggled a little bit here lately. I don't think he's the kind of pitcher or the veteran who would go on the DL unless there is a significant injury that's keeping him from being on the mound. He's had a little bit of a knee issue at times. It nearly kept him from making a start earlier this season, but he's been out there. He insists he's healthy. It's just that his stuff isn't quite as sharp as it was earlier this year. But it presents an interesting situation, the success of Tyler Glasnow since he got demoted down to AAA. He's been outstanding, and it's not just the numbers this time, according to people that I've talked to, including Glasnow himself. He's a different pitcher. He's working out of the stretch. He's letting it go. He's not worried about mechanics. We saw him earlier this season in Pittsburgh get so caught up in his mechanics, and is he doing everything right physically? And he wound up slow. It wasn't the same explosive fastball we saw in the minors that made him such a great prospect. So if that's the guy that they can bring back at the end of the year, he's a weapon, whether it's at the back of the rotation in that spot for Chad Kuhl or Trevor Williams, or whether you do want to throw him in the bullpen as they did just a little bit last September. That's not where his long-term home is. They still view him as a potential top-of-the-rotation arm, so they're not going to rush him into the bullpen. But if they have the same 5 effective starters that have been going so far, that's basically the only place for a guy like Glasnow, somebody like Steven Brault, who's also putting up great numbers in AAA. Clay Holmes, Tyler Epler. The AAA rotation has made a lot of noise. There's also a couple of relievers down there who could make an impact down the stretch. Edgar Santana, you saw him make his debut earlier this season, and Dovydas Neverauskas, who really seems to be putting some things together in the Indianapolis bullpen. So the Pirates will have reinforcements coming probably realistically in September on the pitching staff.
Awesome. That was a great question, Rick. All right, from Luke, he asks very passionately, what the heck does Jose Osuna have to do to get some consistent playing time?
I also appreciate the self-censorship there. That's good. Thank you, Rick. Quite frankly, I think this is kind of just his role right now. Jose Osuna is going to be, a first baseman, potentially corner outfielder. We've seen his defensive issues there. Coming off the bench, mostly playing against left-handers. You saw him get the start against Jay Happ in Toronto on Sunday. He's not Josh Bell. He doesn't have Bell's offensive ceiling. He's not quite that kind of, a high-level impact prospect player that Bell is, and it's just hard to find time for him right now in the corner outfield given the issues there defensively. He's a good defensive first baseman. There's no doubt about that. I think it's interesting that they've tried considering working him out at third base just as a place where he could go, start a game there, maybe get replaced defensively just to get his bat in the lineup and give David Freese some time off and allow the Pirates to be more flexible with Sean Rodriguez, Josh Harrison, and Adam Frazier. I think, Ozuna has definitely a major league future. He's shown that. He's a major league hitter. But right now, just given the defensive, issues that he's had, Josh Bell's place as the first baseman of the present and future, Ozuna's best role right now might just be as kind of a bench bat starting once or twice a week. So I appreciate the enthusiasm. Ozuna has been a pleasant surprise for the Pirates this season, but it's just kind of hard to find a role for him right now.
All right, and from Johnny, so this is a long one. He said, why is it a foregone conclusion that we won't extend Kutch? If this isn't time to sign a fantastic, proven player whose number comes right after Clemente's, when is it? Other small markets spend some money and have depth. Why won't they do that?
I think it comes down in part to, the payroll, the small market, like you mentioned. It's also, this is essentially the kind of move that would be made on an ownership level. I think, if you're talking about the size of the contract that a player like Andrew McCutcheons might earn, it's outside of the Pirates' comfort zone based on what they've done in the past. Their payroll right now is around $100 million. They haven't really ventured too far north of that. If McCutcheons is the kind of guy who's going to earn $18, $20 million a year over 4 or 5 years, that's going to eat up a really significant part of the payroll. So, it's not just bringing back McCutcheons, but it's building a competent playoff-bound caliber team around him. And that's a lot harder to do if you have a guy eating up 18 to 20% of your payroll. And I think there's value in that. I certainly understand the enthusiasm. It's a question we get a lot about McCutcheons. Fans want to see him back. And I think the bounce back that he's shown this year offensively shows that last year may have been the exception more than it was a sign of a decline. Andrew McCutcheons is still at the plate, an MVP caliber player, potentially. So, there's plenty of reasons to keep him, and that's why I think he's going to be back next year under that $14.5 million club option. I just don't necessarily see both sides finding that financial middle ground that it would take to keep McCutcheons in a Pirates uniform beyond next season, because if McCutcheons also has earned the right to ask for what he's earned. He signed his first team-friendly contract extension that's 6 years, $51.5 million before. The Pirates have certainly won out on that end of the contract. They've gotten one of the best players in baseball for a stretch on a complete bargain of a deal. McCutcheons going to enter free agency here at some point soon, and he has the right to ask for what he feels he deserves. So if that doesn't match up with the Pirates, then I would expect both sides to go their separate ways.
All right, and from Clay asks, do you expect Nova to be traded in the offseason?
I don't. I think it's an interesting idea because Nova could potentially be a trade asset as a guy who, with a reasonable contract, 3 years and $26 million that he signed last offseason, a veteran. But I think right now, just given the way this season's gone, teams are going to have some questions about his performance. April was so good. Maybe at the deadline you might have attracted some interest, but they need that veteran guy to hold down a spot. They need innings more than anything else. That's the challenge of having such a young rotation with Tyone, Cool, Williams. Potentially next year you're looking at Glasnow, Brault, Clay Holmes. I'm sure I'm forgetting somebody else in that mix. I would expect that they would hang on to Nova. He does things they like. They went out and they signed him for a reason. If they're in a tough spot at next year's deadline, maybe you would see them listen for offers on a guy like Nova, because it would be a year and a half of club control left. You saw them obviously look to move Francisco Liriano last trade deadline. I think it's an interesting option. I think it's more likely that they would look to trade Gerrit Cole, given the fact that he's young, has that top of the rotation potential, that kind of ace reputation to a certain extent. I could see that maybe being a more likely move, because then you could move Tyone, Glasnow, Williams, Cool, Brault up in the rotation, and you would still have sort of that veteran inning certainty that Nova does provide. That's a good question, but I would lean more toward Cole being the trade asset than Nova.
All right, thanks for that, Clay. Now we have Matthew, who asks, will Meadows be up soon?
Actually, that's a great question, because we asked it to General Manager Neil Huntington about a week ago, and he basically said don't expect to see Austin Meadows this season. He's their top prospect. This certainly seemed like the year that he was going to make his Major League debut, but he had a hamstring injury that's really held him back. It's kept him away from AAA Indianapolis for quite some time now. He didn't hit all that well for the first month or so in Indianapolis, so there's reason to believe that he still needs some seasoning down in AAA. And I think the injury concerns, which have been an issue in the past for Meadows, it's sort of remarkable that he got to Indianapolis as quick and as young as he did, considering the number of hamstring and oblique injuries that he's dealt with to this point. I think the Pirates are probably more interested in having him enjoy a healthy offseason, get back into a training program, rather than call him up in September just basically to fill a spot on the bench. Now, if it's a situation where Meadows comes back and he's hitting well in Indy and he has some time and he looks like he's ready and Polanco is still not back, or Marte's down, or McCutcheons needs some time off, then maybe Meadows becomes their next best outfield option. But at this point, it sounds like the Pirates, as they're surveying potential September call-ups, are not really strongly considering Austin Meadows. They've actually even talked about him getting winter ball at-bats, just to kind of show how much developmental time that he's missed this season. It seemed like a foregone conclusion in spring training. He had a great year in big league camp. Everybody assumed that McCutcheon would be gone at some point this year, and Meadows is his natural successor. But I think it's kind of hard to imagine where Meadows would fit going into September, the end of the season, especially if the Pirates are still in this race and they're not really looking for opportunities to get young guys at bats, where they're focused on winning games and not development. So I would assume next year now we'll be looking at as Austin Meadows' year.
Awesome. Thanks for that, Matthew. Now we have Tony, who asks, how soon until Mitch Keller gets the call-up?
Wow, he just got called up to Double-A, so not anytime soon. I would imagine that would put him on maybe a 2019 or so timetable. You assume he starts next year in Double-A. Maybe he gets the call up to Triple-A at some point late next season, maybe around this time, August, pitches the final month or so in Triple-A. And then you'd imagine then he would start 2019 in Triple-A, putting him on pace maybe for a mid-2019 call-up, which is interesting because then he is potentially a replacement for a Gerrit Cole, for an Ivan Nova. Both of their contracts run out in 2019. So the idea there would be you could get Keller some big league time in 2019, get him seasoned, get him a feel for it, let him punch back as the league makes adjustments to him, and then you have him ready to go from day one in 2020.
All right, thanks for that question, Tony. And we have Jason as our last question today. He asks, do you think the Pirates will ever bring back the pillbox caps?
Outside of a Sunday alternate uniform, I wouldn't expect it. I think it's a fun look. I love the We Are Family throwback jerseys. I really like the ones they used a couple years ago, the 1971 kind of esque throwback jerseys. Everybody likes the Sunday yellow this season, but I don't really think that'll be part of the regular uniform design, as much fun as that would be. But I like the guys who are concerned about the jerseys, because the Pirates definitely do some interesting things with them. They'll have another kind of fun, funky design going on with Players Weekend and the Little League Classic here in Williamsport on Sunday. So that's a fun question, but I don't see it outside of maybe just once a week. All right, so thanks for watching the Beat Reporter's Inbox on MLB.com, presented by Edward Jones. Tune in again next time.